Hello, my friend. Welcome to Do Not Talk, talking about two things you're never supposed to talk about, politics and religion. I loved my grandfather. His name was Lee, one of my heroes, half Cherokee, half Irish, and all stud. He was amazing. Hunter, ran moonshine in the hills of Oklahoma, the Ozark foothills, Ozark Mountains on the Oklahoma side. And his father, CharLee, who I'm named after, murdered a dude, at least one that we know of. It was over a squabble about a woman, and stabbed him, and killed him. Ran up in the hills, hid out in a hollowed out tree until the law blowed over, as the rest of my family put it, until the law blowed over. And true story. It's quite a thing to find out about your past. But that was life in Oklahoma and Arkansas, I guess, in the turn of the century and into the beginnings of the 20th century. And especially if you were a Native American, Cherokee Indian, and you get forced to go there, and then they open up the lands, and all these people come rushing in, and they stake their claims. And just, can you imagine what life must have been like? Even 1910, 1920. Can you imagine what life must have been like? What a time. So I bring that up because my grandfather is the one who always taught me, son, don't talk about politics and religion. It's too divisive. Well, I love you, Pop. And I can't wait to see you again in the afterlife when we all get to heaven, what a day of rejoicing that will be. When we all sing Jesus, see Jesus, who will sing and shout the victory. I can't wait to see him again. And both my grandmothers, the grandfather I never knew on my dad's side. Can't wait. But I think he was wrong with that advice. But he wasn't the only one saying that. He was parroting or trumpeting what he'd heard others say. Oh, it's rude to talk about politics and religion in polite company. You don't bring it up at the dinner table. You don't bring it up at family reunions. You don't bring it up at Christmas gatherings and so on. Look where we are. Look what came of it. We became the silent majority, and I hate that, and I don't like that. And the media has forced it on us. Oh, well, you just take it. If you're on the right, you just take it. You don't say anything. Well, the left, they'll just act like children, and that's okay. You got to be the adult in the room. Don't talk about it. Wrong answer. Completely wrong answer. And I'm done with that. I'm not going to stay silent anymore, and I haven't been for a long time. So I hope you'll join me in that. Speak out. Don't be shy. Say who you are and what you believe in. And stand by it. Pray to the Lord for strength. Pray to the Lord for a boldness. But especially when it comes to sharing the saving knowledge of his son, Christ Jesus. We're commanded to do that. I worked with a guy at Salem Media Group, and it was a Christian company. And I had already been working there like 4 or 5 years at that point, and he certainly knew I was a Christian. And then one time he said something, and I was like, wait a minute, you're a Christian? Yeah. We never said anything. I've talked to you about God before. I never knew. I was actually trying to sell you on the whole idea. And he goes, I know. I just don't believe in wearing my religion on my sleeve. Dude, what did Jesus do? What did he go through? What did the apostles go through? All to let everyone know about the saving knowledge of Christ Jesus, about the plan of salvation through his son. No one comes to the Father except through him. And we're supposed to tell everybody that. Everybody. How do you justify, oh, I don't wear my religion on my sleeve? Well, I just I don't think I'm, not everybody's. I don't want to offend anybody. Oh. Good luck with that. We're going to be held accountable. We are going to be held accountable for the people we don't tell about Jesus. Because if the Lord puts you in such a position that you can testify, share your testimony with someone, You can share your faith in Christ Jesus and what he's done for you and who he is. The Lord puts people in our paths. And if you let that go, you don't take that opportunity, somebody else will. If it's the Lord's plan for that person to know the saving knowledge of Christ Jesus, believe me, they're going to know. And then I've heard Christians say, well, they say drive by church every day and they know that there's a church there and they read the marquee out front and everybody's welcome. That's it. That's not personal. That's not one-on-one. Well, I tithe, so we got a nice church building and we repaint it every few years so it keeps looking nice. So people should just come in. I guess Jesus had it all wrong when he told the apostles to go. I guess he had it all wrong, didn't he? Anyway, there's things going on in the world, especially now in the United States of America, that I never thought I would see happen. I knew that there were nutbags who did not believe that the Holocaust actually happened in Nazi Germany. I knew of them. I don't know any of them. They're not friends of mine. I don't hang out with flat earth people either, because I think that's every bit as ridiculous. But it's very prevalent now. And it just ties in with the whole anti-Jew thing, doesn't it? So this is all something that nobody would ever talk about, especially if you're conservative. Oh, you didn't talk about those things. Yeah, it was a terrible time. Okay, so how about them Dodgers? We're going to talk about it now with my friend Arthur Schopper. He's back on the show again. Love when Arthur's on. A writer, commentator, author, and just an activist, man. He's involved in things that most people would completely shy away from. He's very bold. And I admire and respect people like that. And let's get him into the mix now on Do Not Talk. Are you ready? Hit it. Welcome back, stud.
Hey, it's good to see you again, CharLee. And how about them Dodgers?
How about them Dodgers?
Okay.
I am a NorCal guy, not a Dodgers fan, but it's just that's what my grandfather was, a rabid Dodgers fan. One of my favorite memories with him was sitting in the front yard. He loved to, after all the work, sit down, have the radio going in the front yard under a shade tree, 2 chairs, him and me sitting there listening to Vin Scully calling the Los Angeles Dodgers baseball games. I'll never forget that. It's one of my favorite memories. So let's talk about your recent your recent denying of the Holocaust article in American Thinker. Well done, buddy.
And I got to do a quick plug. I know, just to kind of counter. I know your grandpa's watching us, but we are going to talk about it. Here we go. I'm making sure everybody sees it too.
Cover your ears, Pop, because we're going to talk about politics and religion. There it is. You can, this website right here is where you can get one of these mugs for yourself. Thank you very much.
CharLee Simons. Make sure you give the plug. And part of what happens if you don't. Yeah, like what happens if you don't talk about politics and religion? You have people who make up politics, and it becomes a religion. And this Holocaust denial thing is quite pernicious. It's really insidious. It is it's a cudgel. It's a tool by the left, in fact, to defame and drag down the right. It was revisiting Deborah Lipstadt's book, Denying the Holocaust. And I said, I've got to look into this now because we're seeing this perverse anti-Semitism, anti-Zionism, this whole anti-Jew mantra that's rising up. It has pretty much swallowed up the left. The Democrat Party is basically, they're showing that they've always had these Nazi, Nazi leanings, and now it's all come to the forefront, everything from single payer to gun control. And now there's just hatred of Jews. Deniers who play this they play this two-faced game of, oh, no, I'm just asking questions. This is a vile, satanic, I'll say it again, agenda, and we need to confront it. So to me, there was no better source to look into than Deborah Lipstadt herself. Why she matters is that in this very book, Denying the Holocaust, she went after the premier Holocaust denier of her day. It was a gentleman, it was a British guy named David Irving. David Irving wrote all these very engaging, momentous, very like pacing, really racy style type of, history. He had a really racy style to his writing that really captivated a lot of people. He wrote in the 70s and the 80s. He is still alive, but he now has Alzheimer's, thank goodness. But he was writing just repeatedly, well, the Holocaust really didn't happen. It was a misunderstanding. Only 400,000 Jews died, and it was due to mismanagement and incompetence or bureaucratic setbacks, et cetera, et cetera. And Deborah Lipstadt, she had the guts, and she wrote it very plainly. And she said, he called him a Holocaust denier and a falsifier of history. Now, them's fighting words for a Holocaust denier who makes money off of his libelous, dishonest, publishing. That was his money. So when she exposed him as a liar, he sued her. A lot of people don't talk about this because I'll explain why this is significant in another angle, but he sued her. And as a British citizen suing somebody, it's going to be in a British court. Deborah Lipstadt couldn't dismiss it. She had to respond to it. She had to. She didn't start it. She's gone on many TED Talks. She's gone on many programs, and she says, I will support people's freedom of speech. She doesn't believe in punishing Holocaust denial. It shouldn't be fined. It shouldn't be censored. You shouldn't be sent to jail for it. But so she was held to answer. She went to court. What's interesting, though, is in that court hearing, she's not the one who took the stand. It was another academic named Sir Richard Evans. He's a Welshman, still alive, and he had 2 graduate students, and they went through everything that David Irving wrote. They went through not just his writings, but all his annotations, all his scholarship, all the work, all the research he did. Because this is how devious the Holocaust denial industry is. They throw up a lot of smokescreen, all these books, they quote stuff, and they translate and says, no, the original German text, the original German documents actually said, and this was a noteworthy example. It is so devious. I'm just going to show you how precisely evil it is. So Richard Evans explained in court there would be a word for train in German, and it just ends with like a T. If you add an E to the word, it makes it plural. That's the way the German language works with certain words. And so what happened is David Irving would mistranslate this stuff deliberately and leave off that one little word so that it was like there was only one train, and the train, so it made it look like it was an accident that a train full of Jews was sent to Auschwitz when it was really trains, lots of them. One
especially towards the end, book. When Adolf was starting to see the writing on the wall that he's going to be losing this thing. He can't overcome the Russians and the Americans. This is not going well. They ramped it up. They absolutely fired up to where it was going 24 hours a day, these ovens. They'd pack them into a room, and they would all do this mass shower. Well, that was full of some kind of poison.
Zyklon B.
That's it.
Zyklon B. That's it.
They would die, and right into the ovens they would go, so they didn't have to worry about burying and disposing of bodies. Oh, this was after they took, of course, all their jewelry and everything, even the gold out of their teeth or anything else.
Yep.
Their glasses. There were piles and piles of watches, piles of glasses, piles of teeth, piles. I've seen. There's film of it. It's not like there was AI. It's not like you could alter videos. There's film of it that I've seen. There's docudramas and documentaries that were made in the 40s and 50s about the atrocities of it, and interviews of those who were there. Have any of these Holocaust deniers seen these? Do they deny the word of the American soldiers who were there when they came in, busted their way into Auschwitz and saw the atrocities and rescued the people that were surviving, still alive, barely? Have they seen any of this footage?
What they will do, Holocaust denial, it's an industry. It's really important. I stress this. Just like we have modern day grifters who are exploiting the assassination of Charlie Kirk and claiming that it was Israel who did it, or the CIA who did it, or Mossad who did it. all it takes is this like inkling of doubt and introducing it into the conversation and going, well, look, I'm not doubting it. I'm not challenging it. I'm just asking questions. We hear that phrase in a mocking sense now. I'm just asking questions. It's like, no, you have a responsibility to get answers. You don't just get to hang out in an atmosphere of ignorance or doubt. You have a responsibility. If you don't know, it's your job to find out. You don't get to just make a public statement and doubt something. I just want to build on the point you made about piles of gold rings, the eyeglasses, the suitcases themselves. There was a French historian, Paul Ricoeur, pointing this out just 10 years later. There was more, like, for lack of a better term, archaeological evidence. I mean, within 10 years, maybe archaeology is the wrong word. That implies like hundreds of years ago or thousands of years, but they continued to uncover more of the contraband that was taken from Jews, Gypsies, Slavic groups, anybody who was targeted. Of course, Jews were the number one targeted group. Let's not diminish that, but it's important. Jewish survivors of the Holocaust, correct people. Don't say 6 million. You need to say 11 million. Don't forget. There were other groups that were explicitly targeted.
Thank you. That's one thing I was going to bring up. Thank you. I think that's a huge mistake that the Jewish people make, especially those in Hollywood, and they're creative people. They are a lot in the entertainment industry, and they've made extraordinary films. My most amazing and powerful one I can think of was Schindler's List. Oh my goodness. What an amazingly powerful film.
And he relied on, and just to interject, he relied on documentation. He was relying on real
and actual footage
who were running
actual historical footage. Yes.
Ran the ghettos, who the Nazi Einsatzgruppen going into the ghettos, shooting everybody who didn't leave the ghettos. These are accurate, based on historical evidence. Very important. Just want to interject that. Yeah.
But the mistake I see of the Hollywood crowd, who have pushed this again and again and again and again. How many films have been made about Nazi Germany and the Holocaust and the horrors of all of that? They've ignored the atrocities that have gone on in China, where 6 million, let's talk about 60 million from Mao Zedong, nothing.
The cover up of communism.
Yeah. Radio silence on any of the communist atrocities, Stalin, all that kind of stuff. Radio silence from the Hollywood crowd. But they'll keep focusing on the Schindler's List and keep going back to that and making more and more films and documentaries and TV shows about it. Yeah, absolutely. That was horrible. And I'm sorry that all happened. But the other mistake I think the Jewish people make in the entertainment business and the news business, media, is completely ignoring all the other ones who were murdered by the Germans, by the Nazis.
It is essential. And it is
there
really
were Catholics. There were Jehovah's Witnesses. There were any clergy that didn't get on board.
Yes.
A Christian pastor who said, I mean, look, who's that pastor? I'm trying to think of it. What
you're probably thinking of Dietrich Bonhoeffer. Dietrich Bonhoeffer.
Thank you. Talk about him. What happened with him?
He sacrificed. He was in America getting theological training to become a pastor, and he witnessed the massive, open, bold expression of faith in the United States. He went to the church, the evangelical churches, the black churches. He was really impressed with their open faith and how they were not ashamed of the gospel and to sing praises to God. And it's like he looked at this fervent religiosity and he said, I got to go back. And he knew he was going to die, going back to Germany to fight the Third Reich. And he eventually died. I don't know which death camp where he succumbed, but he went back. There were many. I think that's another mistake too. People.
So it wasn't just Jews who were gassed, who were kept in the concentration camps, who were forced to live in ghettos, who had to wear markings that they were not, sympathizers of the Nazi Party in Nazi Germany. Mm-hmm. It wasn't just the Jewish people, and I think that the Jews make a huge mistake not admitting that and saying, "Oh yeah, it wasn't just us. It was predominantly them, but it wasn't just them."
When we talk, the final solution
that might bother people. Perhaps if they were more honest about that, maybe people would listen more. I don't know. What do you think?
the issue for me is, okay, absolutely, truth must be complete. If you only talk, and this is why I emphasize it, it was very encouraging. It was a Jewish Holocaust survivor that I listened to. This was maybe 7 years ago. She had survived in Slovakia as a child, and she was in the audience correcting people. 11 million. It's so important to tell the whole truth, because everybody wants to cut apart. I don't see it as like a nefarious plot necessarily. We can't ignore the fact that Hitler's number one target was the Jews. It was all Jewry. Yeah. It was all over Mein Kampf. But
it's in Mein Kampf, yeah, it's his book. Yeah, he's blamed them for all the financial woes of Germany after the First World War.
Just the vile, again, satanic is a perfect word. I'll keep saying it because it's the best word to encapsulate the whole Nazi movement and, of course, the communist movement. I think your point is also well taken regarding just the vile horrors of communism, which far exceeded what the Nazis did. However, for the communists, it was a broad targeting of people based on class, based on economics. But when you have something as satanic as targeting the Jews, this has a clear satanic lineage from Haman, from what I'm trying to, you had what the Amalekites tried to do. This has been a multiple historical attempt to wipe out all Jewry. That's one reason it stands out. The other reason it stands out is that there's more of an emotional connection when it's an ethnic group, that people do remember the Armenians as well. That is far more pertinent, I think, in the public conscience. Enough that Turkey still denies it. Turkey still denies it.
Do a movie about that. Nothing.
And they should, because and they need to add to the fact that it was an Islamic genocide.
But that's because it was towards Christians. Yeah, Islam towards Christianity.
Armenians were targeted because they were Christians, and it's still a genocide because they wanted to wipe out them. Adolf Hitler joked about it. Nobody remembers the Armenians. He knew that was a template, a vile template he wanted to follow. But I go back to square one. Here's the thing. The key point of the denial is about attacking Jews, though. I think that's the other reason that it's such a manifest problem. A lot of the communists that are communist sympathizers, they won't even deny the 60 million that were killed. They'll say it was inevitable. That's just the cost of doing business. We want to create a utopia that's perfect for the world, so we're going to lose a couple million here and there. Oh, well. Or they were all evil sympathizers with those vile capitalists. I mean, think about that. You don't hear a lot of communistic denial of these mass killings. Think about that. So that's
another
issue.
I don't know anything about them at all.
They don't care, or they justify it. Oh, it was just a statistic. I mean, Stalin didn't hide it. He said, you kill one person, it's a tragedy. You kill a million, it's a statistic. He had no problem wiping out the 18 million in the Holodomor in Ukraine. And here's the other thing too, that these are important questions. Why is it that the Holocaust does get the attention it does versus the others? And there are nefarious reasons. The commies want to cover their tracks. They want to keep pushing for that evil utopia. Karl Marx, a Satanist, there again, I'm saying it. He literally wrote a poem praising Satan. Communism is satanic at its core. Ronald Reagan, a great joke. Communism works in only two places: heaven, where we don't need it, and in hell, where they already got it. There you go. But you have the denialist industry that specifically targets the Jews and their extermination. Deborah Lipstadt, she makes a point about this. She doesn't diminish the loss. Well, actually, this is interesting. I didn't go into this. She actually makes a comment that I didn't explore a lot, but she actually diminishes the Armenian genocide. She says, well, it wasn't really a genocide. It was a mass killing. I'm thinking, sorry, Deborah, you're wrong on that one. That's interesting. I didn't explore that, but it's something I would. For the record, because some people might give me crap, I know Deborah Lipstadt's a liberal. She was appointed to be the head of the Office Against Anti-Semitism by the Biden administration. She was brought before the Judiciary Committee, I think, or the Foreign Relations Committee, and Ron Johnson, to his credit, confronted her for her own defamatory remarks. Going after Ron Johnson for his his more critical views about what happened on January 6th. Lepstadt had said some really incendiary things. She had to apologize. She apologized for those remarks, and that was it. I think this is also important. Another reason why I wanted to explore this is that I think as conservatives, we need to be interested in truth first, no matter who's saying it. We need to be interested in proper scholarship and research, even if they're liberal. If they're saying something that's true, we should be willing to take it in, work with it, and build upon it. So I gave Deborah Lipstadt that grace. She said nasty things about the John Birch Society. I wrote about that in my article. She's wrong. The John Birch Society is a great organization. They're not bigots. They're not haters. They're not anti-Semites. These were falsehoods. Let's not forget Ronald Reagan fell for that, and William F. Buckley did too. They were wrong. So I got all my JBS friends. I'm just saying hello to you all. I be sending this to them too because I want to give them a shout out. But getting back to the core issue that she was talking about, this Holocaust denial thing, it is pernicious. They rely on some very subtle trickery in order to push this. I want to go back to you're talking about the gas chambers. You had a bunch of pseudo scientists and academics. There was one guy. He was an advocate for using gas chambers for execution. And this is a guy who would go around, he would be speaking before committees and saying that, the best way to execute people is to use gas chambers. Now, the reason why is because he was connected to a business and he was making money, getting states to convert their execution practices from firing squads or hangings to using gas chambers. So right away, there's a problem. And this same creep, he was also saying there is no possible way this could have happened. He had some guy, or he claimed, or he went to Auschwitz and he went to one of the bricks and he checked the residue. This is how devious they do this. So he says, well, look, I checked the bricks and, well, there wasn't really a strong stain of Zyklon B. So there's no possible way that it was to kill them. It was just to kill the bugs. It was just to kill insects because they were doing a laundry service. I kid you not. This is the kind of crap that they will push. The delousing, and they'll dress it up in all this nice science, quote unquote. And this was in a court. This was this had to do with a Holocaust denier in Canada. And so he was in Canada making the testimony, supposed to be a witness for the defense. And you had the judge who was like, do you have any expertise in this science or that science? Do you understand anything about chemical, strains or chemical development? And everything came crashing down. It's like this guy was just an advocate for using the gas chambers to kill people. And he was more of a salesman than he was a scholar. And the whole thing collapsed. Now, and then the verdict was that the guy was found guilty of Holocaust denial. Now, Canada, again, I'll say this, they're wrong. And Deborah Lipstadt, I want to talk about this briefly. She doesn't agree with criminalizing people for Holocaust denial. And now her reason is it gives more attention. Her reason is it inflames it and makes it stronger.
Gives them a voice.
It gives them a voice. I would even say, and I think that should be the attitude. There should be the larger principle of freedom of speech. The answer to speech is always more speech. It's not to suppress it. It doesn't work. We have some of the most creepy people we see online who have said some really incendiary things. People tried to cancel them and they were able to perk up and make their way elsewhere. On the other hand, you look at allowing people to have their say, Elon Musk letting people say their crazy stuff, their stock starts to diminish because people hear their crap and then people hear the truth. People are able to debunk everything and then they lose all credibility. One of my favorite examples goes back to the USS Liberty incident. Thomas Massey gives the handful of veterans exploiting the suffering of their fellow veterans, and including Mr. Phil Turney, who I think is also a Holocaust denier. Nobody wants to talk about that because he's a veteran. Nobody wants to offend a veteran. But you know what? A lot of people on X, right after Thomas Massey exploited the Liberty incident, they just came on board and said, you're wrong. Here's the truth. There were all these commissions. Here's the evidence. Poof. And the whole thing got shut down, and Thomas Massey is an afterthought. And these veterans, they've pretty much disappeared now. Everybody has just pulled their cover. It's gone. This is why you don't silence people. It only radicalizes them. It only gives them a stronger platform. And Deborah Lipstadt, she understood this. Now, here's the other thing, though, that I thought was so profound when I read her book. She doesn't want to silence Holocaust deniers, but she will not debate them. And I thought this was very interesting. And I wrote about this as well. She says, I'm not debating these people. And she gave a clear, concise set of reasons. She says, same thing. I'm not going to give them a platform. But she went a step further, and she was saying these people are lying. What they're doing is unethical. This is not. I thought this was a profound point that we should all take into account. They're not sharing a difference of opinion. This is not, do I think God exists or not? That's a metaphysical discussion. It goes beyond sense. You have to go into metaphysical issues. They are denying facts. They are ignoring history. Would we tolerate a debate when someone says, well, I don't think George Washington actually existed? Or I think that 2 + 2 = 5. Or Deborah Lipstadt uses this example in one of her TED Talks. I think pedophilia is acceptable, and here's why. No, we're not going to discuss this. No, we're not going to give a platform for something that is so fundamentally unethical and destructive and completely dismisses truth, honor, morality, etc. There is a point where, no, we don't keep discussing this. I think even back to a similar experience when I was at Politicon almost 10 years ago. There was this creepy man in a dress, and he was advertising these coloring books, which were like explicitly naked people, and wanting to give them to children. And I said to him, this is not okay. And his answer was, well, why don't we talk about it? I said, no, we're not talking about this. No, you're not doing this. And that has to be the attitude when it comes to Holocaust denial. No, we're not discussing this. It happened, bitch. Sorry. Okay, I cursed. I'm sorry. No, bitches, we're not discussing this. Shut up. No, we're not going to discuss that communism is okay. It's not okay. No, that has to be the attitude. And I mentioned it a little earlier. We've got two creepy people who are going to be debating the issue about Charlie Kirk's assassination. This is obscene. This is vile. You have plenary evidence. We've seen courtroom evidence clearly delineate. You had this guy, Tyler Robinson, with his furry transgender partner. All the evidence is out there that he shot him. The videos are out there. The gun, him walking around in his pants, pulling it out. It's all out there. And yet we have creepy people wanting to profit off of this by having a debate. No, we're not doing this. I wouldn't shut him down. I wouldn't send him to jail. But I would say to people, we need to stop giving that an audience. We need to stop feeding that. So this is a larger issue, and I think it ties into a lot of the horseshoe problems or the woke right. They want to profit off of relentless doubt, relentless mentioning, relentless discussion. And I kid you not, going back 30, 40 years ago, you had an institution. It was called the Institute for Historical Review. Has a nice scholastic name, doesn't it? Sounds really flashy and upbeat and professional. This was a Holocaust denial organization. And part of the reason, sadly, it's a particular interest to me is because it was founded right here in Torrance, California. Kind of a sad thing. The guy who started it, David McCalden, was born in Ireland, but then he came to the United States, settled in California. He founded it right here in Torrance, California. Kind of a sad thing, but the good news is people protested. There was widespread outrage about it, and they eventually fled the city. Very happy about that. It was a profit game. There was like some grift to it. They even put out a challenge. They put out a contest. They said they sent it to all the survivors they could find who survived Auschwitz. And they sent them a challenge and said, we will pay you $50,000 if you can prove that one person died in a gas chamber. One person. So Deborah Lipstadt, she talks about this. This was a fascinating story. So she's not even paying attention to herself. She's giving glory to other people. I'll give her credit for that. Again, close to home, there was a gentleman, Mel Mermelstein. And I write about him in my article. He survived Auschwitz. He was a Ukrainian Jew, or what it would have been called Ukraine, or, that was the ethnicity, even though the borders were all screwed up at the time. He came to the United States, settled in California. He was in Long Beach, pretty close to me as well. And he was one of the people that received this challenge. And he made a bold decision. He says, I'm going to take him on. He says, I'm not sitting one back. Now, he had Simon Wiesenthal, the Nazi hunter. He had told him, don't do this. Don't do it, because there was this idea of you don't want to give them attention. You don't want to add credence to this. But for Mel, he's like, I can't let this go. We can't let them get away with this. It's the same way Deborah Lipstadt, she had no choice. She had to go to court and defend her statement that, yes, indeed, David Irving was a Holocaust denier and a falsifier of history. Now, this was what's so profound about this. It really shows, again, the other devious aspect of this whole Holocaust denial industry. So Mel Mermelstein, human being, he was put under deposition by the lawyers for the Institute for Historical Review. This is how ugly it is. Because think about it, we're human beings, right? So they would question him and say, okay, when did this happen? And what happened here? And what did it smell like? And what did it look like? Hitting him, trying to get precise. What happened here? What happened there? what is it about human memory? It's never going to be perfect. We're not going to remember everything 100%. You see how the game is played. The lawyers can then trip him up and say, okay, well, Mel, you said that you were wearing, it was a blue uniform. But wait a minute, today you're saying it was a green uniform. What's going on here? And that's how the game is played. It is so dirty. It is so ugly. Now, he had a great attorney who...
And it's all just to bring doubt. Just to put that little seed of doubt into a jury's mind.
That is how the game is played. Now, this was so powerful. God bless Mel for doing this, by pursuing this. His attorney was able to make a motion, I think it's for summary judgment. It's not summary judgment, but it's like judicial agreement or judicial review. It's judicial something. I'm so sorry. I'm a little off my kilter on that part. But what he was able to establish is that based on the massive archives, the massive recordings, the massive testimonies, the judge presiding over the case in LA County said, we are going to stipulate as a fact that the Holocaust happened. It became a legal doctrine. That's different. Yes, we have the history books. You can have the evidence. You can have the archives. But when we're talking about questions of law, you have to establish that legal precedent. And Mel Mermelstein did exactly that. And because that was established, it was just a matter of time. IHR, they lost. And in fact, they tried to renege. They tried to avoid paying the $50,000. But they ended up having to pay for it because Mel was able to. The point is, he could give his testimony, and if he was off by one little fact or one little tidbit, it wasn't going to put the whole Holocaust into doubt. That's the point. They were able to play. They were able to push back and overcome the legal games that the IHR tried to do. It is fascinating. It is estimable. This is a story that isn't getting enough attention. There was a TV movie was made about it, starring Leonard Nimoy. I've never heard of this until Deborah Lipstadt's book, playing Mel Mermelstein. That Holocaust memorial site, it still exists. Mermelstein moved it down to Orange County. It still exists. They receive guests, but you have to register to go. It's not just open to the public on a general basis. Mel passed away 4 years ago, but his record of accomplishment still stands. What is so important about what I shared with that aspect and the book in general is that Lipstadt shows how the game is played. She exposes the tricks they engage in, the documents that they pretend to rely on, the appearance of scholarship, which doesn't exist. And underneath all of it, it is unmistakable. It is anti-Semitism. Because again, they're not even talking about the Slavic groups that were targeted, although they do ignore that too. It's always about that Jews are pushing this and they have their nasty agenda and want to push all these things into different institutions, etc. And we have to undermine that legitimacy by pointing out that there was never a Holocaust to begin with. That is what undergirds all of this. It is unmistakable. And I've even seen David Irving, who lost his case. Yes, that was in 2000. He lost his case, and like a little B word. Okay, so I'm clearing it up now for your audience. I apologize. You might have to bleep those words earlier. He then declares bankruptcy so he doesn't have to pay. Because in Britain, you lose, you pay. And that's a great system, I think, tort reform. He went bankrupt, so he never paid anything, but it didn't matter. And I think it's so important. Deborah Lipstadt brings this up too. The whole Holocaust denial, punishing people, the censorship regime. Holocaust deniers love to play that game. Oh, you're silencing me. Oh, you're censoring me. Well, the chief Holocaust denier, he's the one who tried to censor people. He is the one who tried to shut down Lipstadt. He's the one who wanted to shut anybody down from calling another historian a Holocaust denier. Because if he had succeeded in that case, Penguin Books would have had to retract all the books they had published. You know, this book was published by Penguin. They would have had to retract that. Anybody who wanted to make that statement would have had to go to great lengths, go to court again in order to have permission to even do that. It would have been a horrendous setback for historical accuracy and truth. And what's so interesting too, David Irving, he only had one expert witness. It was that creepy guy, Kevin McDonald, with his culture of critique crap. He completely collapsed on the stand. The entire transcript is available for the public. When push comes to shove, when it's a matter of law, when it's a matter of perjury, and they have to tell the truth, they can't spin it, because there's consequences for lying, they completely collapse. So it was just a really riveting set of ideas. It was a the incredible amount of information that Deborah provides in order to fight back against this stuff and to have a new idea on how to do it. We should not be giving them an audience. We don't take away their voice, but we don't promote what they're saying. And we have to have the courage to call it out, what is really going on. So it was just it was very enlightening. I'm glad I could put it out there. American Greatness even republished my article from American Thinker. Sometimes I wonder, because it wasn't like expressly America First themed, because it wasn't like an American policy or an American historical event, but it's because of Americans that more Jews did not die. It's because of America that World War II did end, VE as well as VJ Day. So there is that, for the most part, but I got some support. I got a lot of good feedback for this. And here I am sharing it with your audience. We shouldn't be tolerating it. We're not going to dabble and debate it. We're not going to give them an audience to put out their crap. We can just say, look, you're a charlatan. You're a fraud. I'm not giving you the time of day. You know what happened. You're just trying to get money, or you just want to stir up strife. That's what it really comes down to with this whole Holocaust denial industry.
Yeah, I have no problems calling them out. Not one bit. And I don't care who they are.
Yeah, I'll say the names now.
To things like that, my response are almost always the same. Man, you sound stupid.
They are stupid. It's worse than they are stupid, and it's so stupid. And it's worse than stupid. They're evil. And I got to say their names. Candace Owens. I can't curse. No more cursing. It doesn't help. She's a POS. She absolutely is. And so is Andrew Wilson. He's an absolute POS. These guys are dishonest, destructive people. I saw Andrew Wilson's debate with Deniers. You had Deniers D'Souza on your program last year. Deniers is a very upright, scholastic, honorable person. And he goes into every debate like with the Oxford mindset. But creeps like Andrew and Candace, they're not interested in that. They are charlatans and carnival barkers who set up false ideas. They set up straw men. They lie. They interrupt. They mock. They deride. And we've got to stop giving that an audience. That's the solution here. There was a recent thing. Here, it is in line with this. There's this creep. I'll give him he deserves it because he's getting shame. He's getting ignominy. There's this guy named Dennis Fitoza, Deaf Noodles. I shared a speaking engagement with him initially. Didn't know much about him except that he was like a wannabe groiper. Didn't hear anything incendiary. This was at the end of March at a Hollywood Republican Assembly event. But this guy completely lost the primary. He was running for Congress. He got shut down. He was completely shamed in a debate with Matt Nuclear, an American of Ghanaian descent. Deaf Noodles is like Miriam Adelson. She has dual citizenship, and she's spending millions of dollars in our elections, and she's working for a foreign government and all this stuff. And then Matt simply asked, and then Def goes, and I understand this because, I have citizenship also in Brazil and Italy. And Matt just went nuclear on him and says, wait a minute, you have citizenship in other countries. And how much money have you spent in elections? You are a total hypocrite. And he just blew him up. It was beautiful. And even the other colleagues on the debate, they were like, wow, got him. And it gets worse and better. This same deaf doodle, he was debating Yosef Haddad. God bless him. He is an Israeli Christian. Okay. He's an Israeli Christian. They were having a debate. I think it was called social media advocacy or something. And Def got so mad, he started physically threatening the Israeli, who served in the IDF, by the way. And Def physically assaulted him. The IDF guy pushed his head down to stop him. Def tried to come around and hit him. And then another time he was out in the parking lot, Yosef Haddad.
This was all in front of people?
And it's on video. I can share it with you. Yes.
I got to see that.
What? And, this is a good sign in a way. I'm sorry for Yosef Haddad being harmed. He just filed charges, by the way. Fingers crossed. We're going to see a Holocaust denier, groiper, anti-Semite going to jail.
Yeah.
But you see, this is the culmination point. The Holocaust denial is failing. The USS Liberty exploitation is failing. The anti-Semitism is crumbling. It's so cringeworthy. But people are speaking up. Deborah Lepstadt, she calls them out by name, even though she doesn't debate them. In fact, she even acknowledges that potential hypocrisy. Okay, you all are going to give me a hard time because I'm talking about these people in this book. But we have to point this out because it's being pushed on people, because now you got more people that start to doubt as well. You have everyday ordinary people who start going, wait a minute, you're saying this? Well, wait a minute, I don't understand. Because you have people that they're not nefarious. They don't have any bad, they don't have any negative agendas or anything, but they're not as knowledgeable about this stuff. And they don't know the tricks and the deceit, and then they get caught up in it. And then that's a point I think you brought up a little earlier. You know, how is it that, why is it that people are tumbling into this? We have people who don't have a knowledge of history. You're not hearing stuff being taught how to really analyze or assess historical documents or evidence. What happens if they get one little fact wrong, or if they get a detail wrong? Does that mean you throw everything away? Of course not. Any historian worth his salt. Bernard Bailyn, an excellent academic. He may have been liberal, but you never saw it in his writings. He was a very thorough, conscientious scholar. And he talked about, you know, history is never going to be perfect because we don't live and we don't have like one-to-one correspondent recorded memory of things. But, you know, just because you can't get perfection doesn't mean you throw it away. I mean, look, surgeons cannot get a completely antiseptic surgical theater. So what? Do they go to a sewer and do brain surgery? Of course not. They do the best they can. They can get it to 98, 99, 99.99%. You do the best you can. And the same is true with history. So, I mean, this is just, it's a fascinating topic. Deborah Lipstadt, academics had come to her in the late 80s, early 90s. Would you like to study Holocaust denial? She's like, I don't want to study these people. They're flat earthers. These people are losers. Why should I do this? But she saw how pervasive it was becoming. Oh my gosh, there's so much more. Thank you for giving me the time. Colleges, universities, right? They started to give an audience for this. You had college newspapers that were willing to advertise Holocaust deniers and their own advertisements in the newspapers. And Lipstadt was like, you cannot do that. This is unethical. They are telling you stuff that's not true. And colleges, universities were so weak in the knees, their misunderstanding of the First Amendment was so damaging. They're like, well, we have to give everybody's view. We have to give a viewpoint. It's like, wait a minute. Yours is a private newspaper. You do not have to. You can make decisions. Historians have a responsibility to make decisions, to say, this is true, that is false. It isn't all, well, we have a difference of opinion. And I want to go back to that again. This is how another part of how the game is played. I'm sharing a difference of opinion. I don't think the Holocaust happened. That's not an opinion. That's a falsehood. That is a fundamental challenge to truth. That's what you're seeing there. And then they play the game of, oh, well, you're not going to let me speak. Oh, you're trying to silence me.
People will shut us down because how many shows have I had deleted because by oftentimes social media controlled by Jewish people, Mark Zuckerberg, Facebook being the biggest, most glaring example. And I've had shows deleted because it's medical misinformation, or because a COVID thing, medical misinformation, because it was election denier. You know, that's not true. We've deleted the show and we're penalizing you. And one more, we're pulling the whole thing. And of course, they ultimately.
And what you're talking about, see, Deborah Lipstadt,
the double standard. I hate double standards.
I'm going to give her the benefit of the doubt because I've never heard her talk about COVID, but her standard would cover you. You have a right to say that the 2020 election was stolen because there's evidence for it. You can make that case. There is the evidence for it. People can say, well, it didn't go to court. Well, the problem was it was not substantive. It was all process related. Oh, you don't have the standing to sue. Goodbye. That's what it was. But there were four. I remember 21 cases went to adjudication and had to do with like bad voter rolls. Illegals were on the voter rolls, or people were allowed to vote who shouldn't have, or there were issues with how the ballot harvesting was done. And in 14 of the cases, the Trump administration actually was vindicated. But the problem with voter fraud is it's already happened. How are you going to look into every vote and get rid of the bad vote? But even if it was totally not, like, if somebody wants to tell me, I'll try to structure this, a different scenario. The election of 1788 was stolen. Now that's totally nuts because the election was pretty much electors. It was a very different system. It wasn't a popular vote. George Washington wasn't elected by popular vote. That's just a fact. So when someone says that, it's patently untrue. However, people should be allowed to say that. If Lipstadt is consistent with her philosophy, you should have been able to talk about COVID. You should have been able to talk about election issues. Nobody should be taking that down. That is wrong. It shows it's a power trip. And here's another way to look at this. This is a really good point you're bringing up. It's just this is bigger. God bless you, Charlie. Where this is real discussion here. When it comes to, it's like people have a right to spout off, but they don't have a right to make me agree with it. And I don't have to debate with it. That's the key thing. And if people are wrong, they can be challenged. It's that simple. So if we're keeping consistent, nobody should have taken that down. And by the way, we've been vindicated 6 years later, have we not? I mean, Fauci's diaries have been revealed. All of that's there. And it goes back to Paul Ricoeur. It goes back to the 60s, the 70s. You had historians. They found more archival evidence. My God, the Nazis themselves, they told on what they were doing because they were so proud of it. It just goes on and on. There's just more evidence that keeps opening up, affirming the horrific atrocities that were perpetrated by the Nazis. They cannot deny it. Lipstadt's book gets into so much. It's not just what Holocaust denial is, what how they do it, the games that are played. There's one other question you've been bringing up, and I want to make sure we address that too. Why are they doing it? Why are these? Who are these people? Yeah. Who are these? Who are you?
To what end? I'm
thinking of that scene from Batman when Batman said, "What are you?" That's what I think of these Holocaust deniers. What are they? Okay. Now this is profound because there's a lot more to it than money. There's more to it than just grift. When you're talking about, okay, so this was fascinating. This is going to a different source. David Irving, let's talk about him, Mr. King Holocaust denier who made money off of it. His dad was a World War II vet, fought in Germany, and dad walked out on the family.
Oh, yeah?
And this is so interesting. This was Sir Richard Evans. He's talking about this in another interview. Now, he was the one who was actually questioned. He was the one in the court. And David Irving was representing himself, defending his claim that Lipstadt had defamed him, right? When he was giving his closing arguments to the jury, he literally called the judge, he called him Der Fuhrer. He called the judge Der Fuhrer. What's going on with this? Psychologists suggested, Richard Evans brings this in, David Irving had daddy issues because dad abandoned him. And he was looking to Adolf Hitler as that replacement father figure. It was like, Hitler was not a bad guy. My dad should have never gone to World War II. It's because you British declared war and you made my daddy go to war and I lost my dad. He walked out and Hitler wasn't such a bad. This is the psychology. Now that's with David Irving. So like this, there are issues here. We don't ignore this. With Candace Owens, we know she's a jealous B-word because she had the hots for Charlie. And Charlie married a much better woman named Erica, and she still is a very good woman. People hate her because she is a strong professional who refuses to exploit her suffering and cry on the camera every 5 minutes. It's called leadership. It's called being a parent. I can't imagine the horror this woman has to go through, still having to run an organization, care for employees. She didn't pull the plug on all these other people. This is it. Candace is jealous.
Just to throw this in about Erica, too, she is doing an extraordinary job. Everybody wrote off Turning Point. Well, this is going to be the end. It's not going to continue. But now I'm seeing more and more videos of people like-minded and with the talent like Charlie Kirk had of debating still going on. They're still going to colleges. This new crop of people who have come up who are continuing Charlie Kirk's message and Charlie Kirk's way of reaching an audience and a group of people that we have all written off. Oh, they're all college kids. No, who cares? Well, who cares? You better start carrying. You better start carrying because they're becoming the majority and you're becoming the minority. And they are going to overpower you unless you start circumventing and actually backtracking some of the indoctrination that's been forced into them by some right-thinking people. And Turning Point they're still doing that, and they're growing. They're getting stronger again. That's Erica, man. She's the one doing that,
and she deserves a lot of credit. I don't doubt for a second the hardship she's been through, the difficulties, but for her to soldier on, and this is a this is a gotcha. She's thinking about the country. The evil guy wins if they shut everything down. The whole point was to stop TPUSA, and they have failed to do that. And the same is true, like Simon Wiesenthal, his quote, "Hope lives when people remember." Hope lives when people remember. That's at UC Irvine. I went to UCI. So Simon Wiesenthal, I saw that poster in the Crystal Cove, the student auditorium. And we have to say, because these are the same kids, that all this doubt, this is becoming academic because you've got left-wing types. This is another criticism I level at Deborah Lipstadt. She spends a lot of time hammering the right. I wonder what she thinks. Now it's the left that has predominantly embraced Holocaust denial, Holocaust revision, neo-Nazism, anti-Semitism, anti-Zionism, all of these anti-Jewish themes. And we have to recognize more, like we see more Jewish people just breaking away from this awful party. I have look at Alan Dershowitz. I mean, this guy voted for Joe Biden. I mean, that was how long he stayed a Democrat, but then he left the party afterwards with Kamala Harris. I don't know who he voted for, but he left the party. We see Jewish Democrats in Michigan. They're going to vote for Mike Rogers because they're not going to vote for a Muslim who wants to blow them up and thinks that 9/11 was deserved. This is what's happening. There's a guy named Shabbos Kesselman, I think. He's an excellent debater. He's become a conservative because October 7th was the turnaround. People need to wake up because, whether Lipstadt is genuinely misinformed or she was pushing, I think she was genuinely misinformed. And it's very sad. A lot of Jews, they have seen, this is a sad fact. Let me explain this because I want you to jump in. I want to hear from you, but the David McCaldens of the world, these are the IHR people, the Will Cartos of the world. They were conservatives. They were populist. They supported, this massive crackdown on crime and restore society. It has been a problem that you have people who claim to be conservative. They want to restore, the founding principles, but they call themselves populists, and they bring in all this anti-Semitism. They bring in this anti-Zionism. They bring in their Holocaust denial. It was a lot of people on the right. Now they're getting kicked out, or they've been dismissed, or they've gone to the left. David Duke, he supported Ilhan Omar. You had Richard Spencer supported Joe Biden. They went along with Trump because they thought he was going to be a liberal and he was going to be pushing a lot of that nativist nonsense. But being a culturalist is not being a racist. You care about your culture. You care about your country. I got that word from John Cleese, by the way. He says, "I'm not a racist. I'm a culturalist. Some cultures are better than others." Yeah, they are. Oh, yeah, they are. That is not racist. That's evident. That's a fact. And there it is. I went so far. You wanted to say something. Please go ahead.
Oh, no. I'm having a great time. You keep on going.
Yeah, I mean, this is just.
I'll bring it up in a second. Whenever you're on a roll, buddy. Time to go solo.
It's like this is so. It is so. Again, it's like what I got from this book was so important. It's like seeing the tracks, seeing the history, she gets the paper trail of what these people do, and we need to be educated about it. And that was my key goal with what I wrote, for American Thinker, and then American Greatness republished it. We can fight this, but we have to have that attitude. Not saying, well, okay, let me hear what your views are and let's talk about it. It's like, no, you're a liar. And I'm not going to listen to your crap, and I'm not going to give you a platform for it. And this is part of then you see the deaf noodles of the world. They start wanting to punch people because nobody's going to listen to them anymore because people know what a fraud they are. This is really important. Something else I think is really key. I know this might, this gets into different complications. I don't think that you have the Alternative for Germany, Deutschland, the ADF party. They have said things like, well, we don't think that German people should live under perpetual guilt over the Holocaust. I agree with that. That's not a hateful thing. In fact, it's actually false. It actually falsifies history. If you're blaming German people today for what happened then, you can't do that. That's falsifying history. That actually cheapens history. So they shouldn't be condemned for that. And you've got corporate media in Europe that are trying to cast them as, oh, they're a bunch of neo-Nazis. They're trying to diminish the Holocaust. Not at all. That's not the case. Because also there were many Germans who spoke out. Dietrich Bonhoeffer. One of my most celebrated examples is Sophie Scholl. There was an entire movie in Germany. It came out in 2007. This young lady, part of the White Rose, they were a secret group of college students. They were disseminating, this is the truth. We're losing. The Russians are coming. We need to surrender. They told the truth about the mass killings, the the death camps, the gas chambers. They were telling everything, and the Gestapo caught them. And it was just, it is chilling. The movie was based again on archived evidence kept by the Geheime Staatspolizei, the Gestapo. They kept everything. They documented everything. They were so proud of what they did. It was like within a day when she was charged, convicted, and sentenced. And the movie depicts this, and this is the truth. They still had the guillotine, even in Germany. Yes, they cut her head off. That is how they executed people. They still had it, but they did it privately. They had a smaller guillotine and they cut her head off. And her two compatriots, they executed them too the same day. These were Germans who stood up for their country. They fought. There were military men who fought against the Wehrmacht. They tried to save their country, not just the Rommels who changed their mind at the last minute just to save their country. This was even stunning to me. There were it's like one or two. I'm not saying that all of them were like this, obviously not. You even had some Nazis. They had the SS on their lapel, but they were actually saving lives. This did happen. This is shocking stuff. Instagram, it provides this. I followed up on this stuff, and it's legit. You had a lot of noble German people, even if they had a little swastika on their lapel, who were saving lives. In fact, this one guy, I don't remember his name, but after the Nuremberg trials came out and they started going after the Nazis, of course, the new German government, they went after this one Nazi. And they're like, you were part of them. We're going to take you down too. You had Jews who survived, who came forward and said, no, he helped us. This happened too. And this is, again, going back to the ADF. They are correct. You should not be punishing people today for what happened in the 1940s. You cannot do that. It is wrong. It is immoral. It is unjust. And that's a fair statement because there's a lot of the complications people want to push when it comes to dealing with the Holocaust, telling the truth about the Holocaust, fighting the diminution of the Holocaust. And your point is also legit. We must not ignore the evils that were perpetrated by communism, because that's something else. The left loves to talk about the Nazis so that they can cover up for Che Guevara, so they can cover for Stalin, they can cover up for Pol Pot. We must not allow that. And here's one way to start fighting that too. Mises Institute, they've studied this. They report on this. Hitler learned his worst tricks. He learned his most devious totalitarian tactics from guess who? From the communists. People have this idea that because Hitler was a National Socialist, that he was like on the other side of the spectrum. That is not the case. Horseshoe theory, it still dominates. The only reason Hitler didn't like commies is because he couldn't call the shots. That's the only difference. But everything he did was, for all intents and purposes, quite communistic.
The Jewish people have been so dishonest about the whole dang thing, though, in so many other ways. These Jewish professors, so many of them in all the colleges and universities, teaching that Nazism was far right. That's a lie. Okay. It was socialism, which socialism is just communism with a different name.
Wing. I think we have to be really careful. I don't blame, we have to be really careful about this. It's not the Judaism, it's the leftism. Ben Shapiro explained this perfectly.
And that was the point I want to bring up. Going back to Hollywood, why are so many of them, the reason why they don't make movies about Mao Zedong and what happened in China and so on, and all these other vicious villains, these pieces of shit who have destroyed.
Okay, you said it, so I can.
I did. You can.
Okay.
I did, because I'm very passionate about this. Hollywood has ignored all that, and it's because they themselves are communists. McCarthy was right. Communism has permeated. That's part of their Communist Manifesto. Take over entertainment. That's right there in their. This is our plan. This is how we're going to do it. Take over entertainment. Take over education. Take over the kids.
We have to make this really clear, though.
And they never ever. And so many there's so many Jewish people. Listen, I've been in the entertainment business my whole life. Have been running so much of Hollywood, Disney, so much of all that we get all of our information from, all of our entertainment from. And they themselves have ignored these other atrocities. We're going to make another movie about the Holocaust. Okay, that's fantastic. How about maybe focusing? No, that was communism. And we
Here's
like
the funny
that.
thing, though.
We like communism because
I push
we're
back
communists.
I push back on the general theme. I got to start with like.
How are they
Bertolucci.
communists, by the
Well,
way?
hold on, let me
How are
finish.
these Jewish people communists? How are they? I have the same question with
No.
Catholicism. So many of them are on the left. It goes directly against your faith. It goes directly against your faith. Every single thing about
really
it,
important,
including the abortion, including the homosexual marriage, everything that the Democrats have been pushing and pushing.
That's interesting.
And pushing.
Yeah, you talk about like
how are you supporting that? How are you not? How are you actually aligning with them when it goes directly against your faith? And I think that one guest I had on, I wish I could remember her name now, but she encapsulated it perfectly. She said, because they're Jewish in name only. They're not following the faith. God is not their sovereign. They themselves are, and the government is. That's who they worship. They're not following the creator of the universe. They have no interest in Abraham and the promises that the creator made to the man who started it all because of that relationship. And God is faithful. He made promises to Abraham. They reject that. They don't want that. So they've aligned themselves with communism. They've aligned themselves with this whole life because it is, as you said earlier, satanic. It's all about the one world order, new world government, and we're going to bring this in one way or the other. And we're going to do it through coercion. We're going to do it through shaming. We're going to do it through bringing doubt into your mind for things that we've known for so long when it comes to God, family, country.
Yeah.
Let's first tear down the United States of America. How many other films have they made that does exactly that?
We are. I think Dennis Prager talked about the deep alarm. Seeing how, but for many of these, sadly for a lot of Jews, they if they've they abandon the faith, if they have no recognition of God, what happens is it has to be the government. He's talked about this at great length. I do feel compelled. I think we do have to put this codicil or this, the asterisk into it. There's another pernicious aspect, and you see this from the horseshoe right. They want to give this argument that, well, it's something in their genes. So a Jewish person is automatically predisposed to pushing communism, or a Jewish person is automatically, because you see this overrepresentation you're talking about, whether it's in Hollywood or whatever. I think this is, again, why I brought up Kevin McDonald, that he was the star witness for Mr. Holocaust denier and completely collapsed on the stand. This is important because it's, again, more scholastic garbage, with the culture of critique. Well, it's like, look at Jews. You see Jews so overrepresented in the legal field and in the movie field. Look, and they're pushing communism. These Jews are horrible. It's like, hold on a sec. The reason why you're seeing a larger representation of Jewish people, whether in media or Hollywood or advocacy, etc., it has to do with an interest in learning. It has to do with a culture of learning and education and erudition and reading. Why you saw Jews prominent in finance, especially in Europe. They were allowed to do it. Catholics weren't allowed to. This had to do with a misreading of scripture. This has to do with cultural practices that are, in some ways, neutral. Anybody can step in, put an emphasis in reading, learn to read when you're 5, 4, make it a wonderful thing. This is true, I've heard, in Orthodox households. They put honey on the pages of Torah, so kids lick it and they associate sweetness with the word of God. Christians, why don't we start doing that? We should do that. Reading the word of God is cool. It's wonderful. It actually brightens your very essence. You've had Christian ministers talk about this. But see, there is that culture of something else too. It was Nathan Kofnis who debunked culture of critique. Jewish people were able to, they worked as middlemen. They were able to work in financial interests. They were not allowed to own land because of persecution. You can't go into real estate. Farming wasn't an ideal either. Look what happened to Tevye. I mean, that is based on a true story, what you see in Fiddler on the Roof. They had their farms, they had their cattle, and then it would all get taken away. They'd get pushed around because of pogroms. So what's the next best thing? You work in finance, you work in, office or clientele professions, you work within the management of governments. That way you don't get pushed around. Let me finish this, please. A lot of people love to scream and yell, look at the Jews, they pushed communism in Russia, oh my gosh, Lenin. For some reason, they don't want to talk about 95% of the Bolsheviks were Orthodox Christian. Explain that one to me. Should we shut down the Russian Orthodox Church? No. Should we do that? No, because you have to look at what's the core of the individual or the perverse zeitgeist that was pushing people. But we've got to really militate. It ain't the flesh. It isn't their genetics. What you're seeing is if you have people who step into a secular milieu and they don't have that moral compass, you're going to see problems. And you have a wonderful group of people that have been blessed by God that have skill sets because of biblical practice, biblical adherence, even if it's been, they ignore the God part, but there's still those there's a secularization, but there's still the erudition of learning, reading, family. You promote somebody at 13, he's a man, he can step into the community. These kind of practices enable people to be more successful. Maybe instead of being jealous and blaming them for all the problems of the world, why don't you pick up a Bible? And
what do you try and replicate? Yeah. I mean, what happens when a child turns 13, both the boys and the girls in the Jewish faith? What happens?
I mean, they get the celebration. They get that
bar mitzvah, bat mitzvah. But they to get the party, they have to prove that they have memorized huge portions of the Torah, their scripture. Our Old Testament. They have to memorize this. They have to learn all the songs. They have to recite them perfectly, or you don't get that party. You don't complete your bar mitzvah and become a man. This is something that's ingrained in the culture. Arthur's absolutely right. Instead of running that down, why don't you try and replicate that? Why don't you do that with
the Bible, read it? And this is the thing I say to they say Christ is king, Christ is king. What they're really doing is it's a provocation against Jews. How dare they do that? It's so disgusting. It's so evil. But Galatians 3:13. I mean, we are blessed with believing Abraham. We are blessed with Christ brings us into that. Why are you complaining? I mean, because it goes to show, again, it goes right back to the Holocaust deniers. They go by lies. They want to blame someone else. They have daddy issues. They're secular. They can say Christ is king, but they're just as bankrupt spiritually as any guy on the street who doesn't even think about God. This is a very important thing we have to push against. This is another reason why we have to be militant against this Holocaust denialism, the doubt games, the revisionist games. Truth is so important, and it's under attack like never before. We see it incredibly so with all of people can say whatever they want, and there's no fact checking, there's no consequences anymore. So we have to bring that guardrail with our own wisdom, our own discernment. And Deborah Lipstadt's book is a great resource for understanding what Holocaust denial is, how they get away with it, how to push back on it, the resources, and to know what the games they're going to play and how to undercut it. Because going back to that Zyklon B example, it was pretty insidious when you have this death penalty advocate relying on, well, I have this expertise in gas and samples and all this other stuff, and I can read the data, and you're able to look through it all and go, no, you don't, you're lying. You're wrong. You have no information. You have no expertise on this. And the other point, just getting to the specifics about it, well, there was only a trace of Zyklon B. Well, let's see, after 70 or 80 years, you think it's going to phase out a little. That doesn't mean it didn't happen. You can't, even the logical fallacies that these deniers engage in is just laughable. I would say, I think another big problem is, as long as you have laws on the books that punish Holocaust denial with criminal sanction or fines, you're going to still have this problem. This is a mistake. And, whether it's Jewish advocates or Gentile advocates, this is a mistake. This is not the way to go. You have to let people be stupid. If Deborah Lipstadt, with all of her liberalism, is willing to respect people's freedom of speech, that everybody else should too. It shouldn't be that complicated. Right.
Man, well done. And find his story, Arthur's story about the Holocaust deniers in America Thinker, americathinker.com.
American Thinker, American Greatness. I can announce today I finally got, into the 21st century. I have a Substack. I have a Substack now, Arthur_shopper. If you want to post that at some point, that'll just make it easier. Anything on a blog spot, I'm going to start putting it there, especially the articles that we have talked about. You'll find them there too. It's just and people will be it'll be emailed to them. I'm learning how to step into this new technology.
Good.
That's not really good.
I'm not on there. Not yet, at least. So it's substack.com. And then what? How do you find it? Is it a
Yeah.
/ like Rumble, or how is it?
I know.
What happened? Oh no. What happened?
I'm still alive. I'm here. It was a tech issue on my part.
Okay.
It was
okay. I'm getting a little paranoid these days. Anytime we talk about serious subjects,
I hit the wrong button, so I'm not afraid to admit I've made a mistake.
In the meantime, though, I found it. It's substack.com / and then the @ symbol.
Yeah.
Arthur Shopper, SCHAPER.
After all this time, I finally got on board, So
there it is.
A special thank you to Larry Sand. He said, Arthur, you need to open up a Substack. What are you waiting for? And I finally did it. So there it is.
I keep getting people telling me that too, and I need to be on Telegram and all this stuff. And I'm like, I'm not going to put any more effort into something that's already not making me any money.
Telegram's not going to work.
Just go to Rumble, okay? Rumble doesn't shut me down. They haven't deleted one show yet, and I've gotten some pretty serious subjects on there. Yeah. Rumble.com / do not talk, and find Arthur at Substack now, and of course his blog spot and everything else. You're fantastic, man. You're fantastic. I really appreciate you.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
You bet. I'll talk to you later. There you go. And he bought one of my mugs, so that always makes me happy. He actually bought one of my mugs. I didn't give it to him, and I probably should have for all the times he's been on my show. But he bought one of these big old 15-ounce coffee mug. Big old 15. I love big mugs. And I cannot lie. Them other brothers can't deny. I also have shirts and hats and ways for you just to give if you want to support this ministry. I sure would appreciate it. Buy me a cup of coffee. Buy me a tank of gas. Here in California, that's about $100. So thank you. Well, thank you at CharLeeSimons.com. CharLeeSimons.com. May God bless you and keep you. May God bless America. But most importantly, America, bless God.